We started generating 10 crores per month of revenue for the bank with a 60%. The second year itself, we crossed 100 crores of revenue as a bootstrap company.
If you are a builder who has ability to sell, I think there's nothing that can stop you.
I like people who are sitting on the edge of the chairs, who are like desperate to reach to a certain reason why they're becoming entrepreneurs.
There's a rare breed of founder who doesn't just build companies, they build gravity. Visham Sikand is one of them. 3 bootstrap startups, 3 exits, senior veterans as co-founders, and equity shared generously at every turn. On this episode of Build to Share, we learn what it actually takes to become a people magnet.
Anything that leads to a binary outcome in life also should not be very encouraged. Except a marriage, you should be benevolent. You should be allowing everybody to earn.
Equal does not mean fair.
A founder contract is a must to invest.
If a young founder is today going and looking for a co-founder, what are some of the red flags? So, like I said, Visham, the idea is to understand your experience in building the businesses that you've been building, and there are particularly some elements in that journey I would be, a lot more keen on kind of understanding. So, if you could just give us, 50,000 feet view of the last 10, 15 years of your entrepreneurial life.
I started becoming an entrepreneur in my last job in real sense, as in like I was in ABN AMRO Bank, the Netherlands-based bank. In 2007, I was doing some product in the bank, and bank was making tons of money in that. And I'll come to that business later. And I said, why can't I go out and do this? And then I went to the 2 vendors who were providing us those services and said, hey, you know what? I made the product. You guys know how to fulfill it. Let me go to other banks and try and do this. And that's how I started my journey in 2007 and 2008 beginning. The company's name was Plat5. I always love numbers in the company because that makes it unique, right? The way you asked me my name, it makes it unique that, hey, there's a number and people will remember. That's a Plat5 was my first company. And then I went to 2 partners. And I actually went to one partner, and he was a Fortune or Forbes 100 of India at that time, one of the richest guys, British Indian guy, British passport. And I said, sir, look, you are my vendor for ABN AMRO, and we do this. I want your brand, and I'll go to a bank and say that, hey, I've got Mr. Aditya Gupta as my partner, and we can do the same thing which ABN AMRO is doing and generating lots of revenue. So he said, okay, do not form the company. Go to a bank and convince them. You can tell them I'm your partner. If they say yes, we'll form the company. So I went to Barclays Bank. I still remember I was still in ABN AMRO, and I told my boss that, hey, I'm going to be doing something of my own. And he didn't want to leave me. He said, okay, take a 3-month sabbatical and try it. So went to Barclays Bank. They approved it. Went back to Aditya Gupta. They said they've approved it. Then the second condition he said was, look, they won't be a 2-person partner in this company because 2 is a conflict, 3 is a decision. So I learned a lot from him. He was 20 years elder to me. Then I went and scouted for the 3rd partner. And it was all my idea, all my thought that I had to put out. I was 27 years old. I gave out 33% of the company to 2 people just because of those inputs. But we had the time of our lives. We had almost all big banks partner with us. The entire credit card, debit card data of theirs, because we were debiting their customers with CVVs at that time, came into us. And we used to debit the customers on the bank's behalf. Customer always saw that the bank is debiting them. And that's how it started. And we did 1 million sales at approximately 5,000 rupees each, which was about 500 crore plus, bootstrapped. And that's how the journey started. I still remember the 3rd month, I got back, we generated about 90 lakhs of profit.
Wow.
And for me, I was just at a 27 lakh salary, which was very good for my batch, because I was doing a little better because I was a little more of a hustler. I told Aditya Gupta, what should I do? Can we split this money? He said, absolutely. Go and split this and keep generating profit every month like this. So on the way to my home, I was too close to my dad. I had 2 options. Because till 3 months, I did not tell my dad that I become an entrepreneur because he was from the government, and for him, a kid having 27 lakh salary was like everything on earth. And my elder 2 brother and sister were in US. So I told him that here's 30 lakhs. He said, okay, that's a lot. What are you doing? So I said, I've started my own business. And he said, what are you going to do about it? I said, look, Dad, I love socializing. So one socializing at that time, maximum was 10,000 bucks. So now I can do 300 parties. And that was the first I thought of. And that's what I thought. 300 parties means 300 more new friends and networks. And I'll grow like this because the background was government and network was limited to my MBA school or engineering school. And a job, you don't make that much of a network, frankly, in first 5 years, that too back in 2007. And that's what my first 30 lakh was. So that was my first business. And then that did really, really well. got covered in almost all media, and yeah, so it did very, very well. And then parallelly, because of Bootstrap, I started my health company also.
So this was what was the product?
So, okay, the product was very interesting. In 2006, ICICI Bank came out with a front page article saying no more of annual fees on credit cards. So, ABN AMRO Bank used to charge, I think, 2,000 rupees, which is a lot at that time, per annum. And my boss, my retail banking head, my credit card head came running to me because as product manager for credit card, which fee was my responsibility. He said, what will we do now? So I thought at that time, Citibank had launched a product called Fly for Sure, which was if you spend 50,000 rupees on the credit card in a certain period, you will get 2 flight tickets from Jet. The response to that program was crazy because no one had done that. So I said, okay, why don't I tell all our silver card customers that we used to have silver, titanium, and gold and those kind of things, like silver, gold, and whatever, titanium at that time. Why don't we tell all the customers that if you want to become a gold customer, you'll get the Van Gogh private banking card looking. It's a flip without card limit upgrade. You'll get 2 flight ticket, but you have to pay 5,000 rupees for it to get that benefits of that. So it was an upgrade program. No bank had done. Now it sounds very normal and whatever. And I only went to Air India to negotiate these flights. I still remember how much I negotiated for a short distance was $400, long distance 800, and going to Bangalore to Delhi was $1,200. So even if 2 flights, redemptions don't always happen, and you gave small other benefits, and we've sold $5,000. The margin was 60%, and we started generating 10 crores per month of revenue for the bank with a 60% margin. That's when I came out and said, hey, this same thing, Barclays Bank offered me a job, Deutsche Bank offered me a job. I said, I don't need to do a job. Let me go to this BPO. Let me go to this vendor who's fulfilling all this when you call for redemption. And that's what we did, partnering with, we as a completely I did. And then we partnered with Barclays Bank, SBI, Deutsche Bank, ABN AMRO, and a couple of other banks I'm still thinking. And we did 1 million sales at that time. In the second year itself, we crossed 100 crores of revenue as a bootstrap company.
Wow. No, I remember Kingfisher and MX had a card, which I don't recollect which year, but we had a lot of fun with that card. Yeah, MX.
Are you ex-Amex?
Yeah.
Oh.
So MX, I'm just trying to recollect. Kingfisher had just then got meaningful market share, and since the hub was Bangalore, we would end up flying mostly Kingfisher, and MX came up with the card, which is one of the first co-branded card, and fabulous. I don't know. I can't even recollect. Obviously, MX was not free. You would pay an annual fee, and straight away you would get the money back in, some flights, upgrades, and so on and so forth. So as consumers, it was a great product. So but I didn't know these numbers. So great to see.
And I'll tell you the story around it. So Amex cards and Amex portfolio used to be managed by a company called InfoVision Group. The chairman of InfoVision Group was my first partner, Aditya Gupta. So I knew that he had 1,000 employees at that time managing all the banks. So I wanted a partner. So, because one of the things that I want to tell is that how to choose the right partner was something that as a skill I always had. That hey, he had the brand, he used to work with banks, and the trust was what's required. The product I had. So the product into trust was the result of that company. Yeah, because bank giving out data will give it out to only players that they've already trusted the data with. So that's how I chose that partner. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. So you were 3 founders when you started this business, is it?
To be truthful, and they won't mind that, 1 founder and 2 partners. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Interestingly that way. Yeah.
Okay. And for how long did you run this company?
About 3.5, 4 years. And that time, if you remember, 2008, 9, 10, Lehman Brothers happened. All these banks were slowing down and all, but we still because the banks want to continue generating revenue. But a lot of these banks back in India, now I remember HSBC was also, so slowed down the credit card disbursement because they did not have enough funds to even disperse and all that. So I made as much money as was possible during those years. Until 2010, 11, we continued it. Then I had parallelly started the health company, which these partners said, keep hustling on the first one, making so much money. And I always wanted to do something which was completely something that I had built from scratch, zero, and I was the only partner in that. Yeah, so that was the second company called Indian Health Organization. So if you see the name, so my dad being in the government wanted me to join WHO or UN, that was aspiration. So I was crossing the WHO building in ITO Delhi, and I said, when I was crossing, I said, I'll take the name IHO instead of WHO, IHO. So, and to get the name IHO is not easy because first of all, if you take a name India in a company in India, you have to have a 50 lakh capital. I don't know if you know that. Then when I applied for this name, obviously it got rejected a number of times. I think more 27 times. But I kept insisting, and then I kept changing the reason why I'm putting this name and all that. Finally, we got the approval, and that's how IHO was formed.
So just walk me through how many employees were there. And again, it was just three of you guys, and like you said, most of the operating work was done by you. In that sense. So how big did the team become? What challenges did you have in putting together the next level teams?
Yeah. So first, obviously, in building a team, you have to have the right partners who are appreciative of who you are. I always tell all my team that be who you are. Do not change that, because that will never lead to the final happiness and success. Happy if you're not happy not being you is no good. So got the right partners was the start. In the first company, the second year, we had 440 in-house plus outsourced team.
Wow,
Because everything
that's a
that
lot
you
of
wanna keep-
people.
A lot of people, because we were doing more than 100 crores of revenue, which was
Revenue.
a lot of calling based, operation based. At that time, they were tech. Sounds like, why didn't I do tech? But 2007, 8, 9, there was no tech. Let me put it that way. There was no automation. The concept was not there. Whatever little I was doing on dialers and all was me only in the country, literally. So 440 in that company. In Indian Health Organization, we reached outsource in-house around 1,200 people. So that's what the second company was. And then Goals 1 was in its peak, because it was the last third company was an AI and tech company. It was not number of people, it was a type of people. So we had more than 75 very intelligent people in that company.
Wow. So this first set of people, in terms of profile and so on, I'm assuming they were a lot more younger people, and people who are probably early in their own careers, right? Or were these people whom you had to hire from an existing setup somewhere? Did you find where did you hire these people from?
Oh, great. So if you remember, I said getting the right partner. Aditya Gupta used to have a huge BPO, and a lot of this would required calling. And if I would have started doing my own BPO setups, so I knew he had the infrastructure, I knew that he had the trust, and he has data security control. So a lot of these people who were required to be called were taken on his company roles for us. That allowed it to be extremely smooth. We were up and running in 30 days. Client sending us a contract, we were able to do everything, like getting a payment gateway at that time. I'm forgetting the name of the company. I was the first one. Devang was the name of the founder there. I'm forgetting his company. I was
CC
literally the
Avenue.
first- not CC Avenue. Even CC Avenue just got its first competition in his company. I forgot the name. Yeah, and yeah, so CC Avenue was one of the ones who was charging 3 to 5%. I didn't want to give that 3 to 5% at that time. So Devang, I'm forgetting his name, Narela. I don't know, I forgot his company. So I was his first ever doing so much revenue that actually maybe his company's valuation jumped only because of us and whatever. So yeah, getting these people on the third party roles and all was required, because doing all those compliances would have taken so much of my time. So as I said,
Correct,
getting a
correct.
partner, not about just getting a right person, what he brings to the table in the true sense and practical sense. Not just that, hey, you know what, Satish is a great guy because he can raise funding. He raises funding and he does this 16 things very nicely, required for that business.
So and what was the eventual exit for this company?
It slowed down, but slowed down as in, like, we slowed it down because I was starting the health company, and when my focus went there, this slowed down. But overall, all the MNC banks were not launching any new cards. They were not issuing new cards. Most of the banks, I was like, including in ICS, slowed down during the 2009-10 period. And then to be truthful, we had almost juiced out most of the banks partners fee revenue for upgrades. Like, you can't keep upgrading a customer further and further, right?
Correct.
India, I don't know how many customers they had. We had almost done most of the customers upgrade. Yeah.
So pretty much three of you were the primary shareholders in the company, or you had other?
Yeah. Well, 33.3. Mr. Aditya Gupta, we gave 33.4 because he was 20 years elder to us. Yeah.
And in terms of the economics of the business itself, whatever profits you would earn at the end of the year, because I'm assuming since this does not require any R&D, technology development, and so on, there was nothing to put back into the business. Maybe you would put for marketing and some activities.
There was a very interesting thing which I would love to tell entrepreneurs. If I would have gone to a bank and said, hey, you know what, there's a cost to this program. What I did was, I could have told them, hey, I'm going to call the customer, they will debit, and you have to give me X percentage of that as my fees. I went with, and this just maybe possible because of the health and the treks that I do. I went to the bank. They said, how does the customer know that you are debiting or I am debiting? The narration is all they come to know. So let's say it's an HSBC priority circle or whatever. I will debit the customer. You give me, the customer has to say yes, recorded calls, everything. You have given me the CVV and the card number, I'll debit it. I will give you 40% of the revenue. So on your books, you'll only see revenue without a cost. Would you love that? When the cards head went to the CFO telling that, the CFO actually started telling that when are we starting this program? Because just imagine a program is just revenue. Like when you sell a card, when you're charging an annual fees, there's a cost of acquisition, right? It's 2,000 minus 1,300. Here it was just let's say 5,000 to 40%, 2,000 without any cost. Because we had retained 60% and then given the bank the rest of it. So that's why all the banks started giving us. So it's a lot of this is what I learned in Harvard also. A lot of life is not just about the product, it's how you structure the product, how do you structure it financially. A lot of us back here in India still are a little to learn on the financial structuring of products. If you put it right, you will have a lot more clients.
Yeah, I think, the typical consumer play versus business play, the playbooks have been largely, especially for software companies, right? And you're seeing all of that getting challenged now with AI, and so on. The growth of typical software companies have followed a very simple, predictable, kind of path. Here's your customer acquisition cost, here's your lifetime value, here's your monthly subscription cost, and so on. And I don't think there's been any innovation in that as well. And hopefully with what's happening with AI, at least that's going to come in. Now, I don't think anybody can price their product the way they were used to price before. The cost of building has changed, cost of acquisition has changed, and somebody will, like you, would probably figure out a smarter way to make money on the similar products. So, coming into so in terms of the way you structure the ownership, if you were to do it a similar thing now, with all the hindsight and wisdom acquired over several years of running different kind of businesses, this equal split of ownership, is that a good default to go with, or you would assume that you have to take a look a little more closely to what each person is doing and so on?
So I'll put in a very different perspective. There's no rule to it, but it depends on what do you want. At that stage, when I was 27, 28 cusp, my most important aspect was succeeding, right? Succeeding was more important. So the goal was to generate cash. It was not about, hey, let me raise some funding or whatever. In 2007, 8, 9, there was no funding. But I met the Shailenders of the world when they heard about what we were doing and all, and from Sequoia and all, they all came in and all. But the goal was to succeed and generate cash. When an entrepreneur thinks as a business person, then they will think it practically. So at that stage, it was for me, hey, you know what? I've got this idea. I know it will generate cash. I need these two things to happen. Whatever it takes to make that happen. I have to get that. For me, from a 25, 27 lakh salary, for to get 30 crores was more important than to say, hey, you know what will Satish get out of this? So that was that stage of life. Obviously, I've done 2 full startups after that with full exits. IHO, when I did IHO, Indian Health Organization, I did not go with 33%, and the partner was extremely intelligent, more intelligent than me. He was from St. Stephen's Eco Honors, IIM Calcutta. I asked him to put a certain capital in the company, gave him a certain percentage, it was far lesser than a 33.4. And he was absolutely okay with it because the success had followed, right? So now I knew that the chances of success are high and things will happen. So it changes with time and the kind of expertise you bring in. If you are the one who's thinking of the idea, you're the one who's founding, do a lot of the foundation work, then it changes accordingly, and the teams also align to that. So it depends on the stage of you yourself, the value that you bring. So the next company, it was 85-15, for example, and we kept it bootstrapped till the end. And the last company, again, I think it was 100 first me. Then I gave out ESOPs to the entire team. So it changed from a 33.4 to 100%.
Yeah, correct. I mean, in your case, you probably had you were coming it from a different perspective because the kernel of the idea and the business came from you. And yet you've done some work and then tried to figure out to build a business, right? But if you were to take a look at a new startup that's coming out of, either people coming out of college and wanting to do it, where almost everybody is of similar types, and then they'll all have their differentiators and value they bring. But typically you will see 3 founders starting out, with 2 to 3 years experience or right out of college. One of the things that we've seen is, this sharing ownership equally is almost like more driven from the fact that, hey, this is not important. Each person may be contributing a little differently, but let's go with this because this is the easier of the options to have. So we've kind of over the last few years developed a framework where we go and say, okay, take 100% of the ownership of the company, divide it into two parts. One part is what we call the founder equity. It could even be 80% of the company, and divide that equally between all the founders who get started, and then keep 20% or 15% or 25% as what we call operational equity. Who's going to be the CEO? Let's make sure that that person who's going to play the CEO's role gets the lion's share of this 20%. So the idea is at the end of the day, it's not equal because equal does not mean fair. But at the same time, you're not having an imbalance or you're not having these very difficult conversations even before you get started. I don't know. Have you thought of a mechanism like that, or what do you think of doing it a little more structurally, though that may not seem like the most important problem to solve at that time?
So very interesting. I like the fact that you're trying to put some maths around the fact that finally there has to be some structure to it. So I've invested in about 68 or 69 companies, and interestingly, I haven't heard of this, it's not a bad thing. But I've seen in people who have been classmates in the same college also have different structures. So there are times when there's an alpha who will say, hey, you know what? And every business there's also an alpha, right?
Correct.
I'm just saying generally.
Correct.
That alpha definition, whether that's so he's okay with that 20% remaining, out of which he gets 10%, so he's finally getting 40%. Maybe very different from another alpha who will say, hey, you know what? To begin with, at least I have to have 50 to 60% of the company. So a lot of these dynamics are learnings. I always encourage them that everybody should be motivated. Obviously, everybody has to be motivated, but solve it between themselves. That's a real fact that wherever I've seen two founders, I've seen a lot of bickering. I've seen a lot of places where things have fallen across. So generally, three is good. And in some of these companies, I've always come and said, hey, you know what? An external view from someone like, let's say, me or anybody else would help. But I would not put a rule to it, because that is also a part of entrepreneurship, to learn how to do this right. There will be times where, for example, in the previous health companies, I told you I gave 50% to my friend. On the day of the acquisition, which was by 8 now, Fortune 32, my friend said, hey, you made enough money in life. He said, okay, if I get a little more percentage. I doubled that 15 to 30% for him on that day of the acquisition. So I'm just saying So I'm just saying, so it's about ensuring motivation, friendliness, and happiness in the company. Nothing that should stop that. But I would personally not put a rule to it. But there are people who are not Visham or let's say an alpha who do not know how to solve it. The rule that you just put across would not be a bad one if I had to put that. Instead of 80, I would just probably do that at 60 and then keep 40 for a lot more. So I'll just put the number a little lesser. That's it.
Correct. No, I think, and again, all of these are frameworks that may not work, right? And one thing of the frameworks is that it won't work in every case. So if you take a look at the Indian scenario, normally you're looking at 2 founders, 3 founders as an ideal situation. And in the 3 founders, there's one person who's going to be building, there's one person who's going to be selling. Your ideal situation is there are 2 builders and 1 sellers, right? Which is almost like, if I were to look at the 10,000 odd startups that I've seen, that works probably the best in terms of giving yourself the best possible chance of making progress. But one place where, again, and I would like to hear your comments on, ultimately there's going to be, even though there are 3 founders, 4 founders, there's going to be one CEO of the company. And I honestly believe that the CEO has to get more, because there are a lot of stuff that the CEO handles. If you're a single founder company like yourself, and then you don't have a choice, the monkey is always on your back, right? But if you have 2-3 people, one of them eventually will graduate to become a CEO. May not be right at the starting point, 2-3 years down the line. And even if you ask any VCs, they'll tell you the best mechanism is when one of the founders becomes the CEO when the company is growing. Nobody likes to bring an external CEO and so on, irrespective of how fast or how large the market is, right? And in that sense, for somebody who's taking so much of heat, it's only makes economic sense to make sure they're rewarded appropriately. So from that CEO perspective, do you see any specific things that needs to be done to make sure that the CEO is treated differently from the rest of the founders?
Logically, yes. But I will say the times are changing. The guy who's leading tech in today's AI world. So day before Saturday, I was talking to a team which are 3-member team, very smart people from IIT Kharagpur, and they plan to actually become a unicorn with just 3 people. So now in that, the value of the CEO is far less than the person who's building the tech on that, right? I'm just saying, so things are changing in a very different way. The CEO is going to represent them. He's a little more outspoken person, but the person who's building that tech, which will be scalable across the world, has a lot more value. So they have given 50% to that person. So I was quite happy and amazed to say that, hey, how things are changing on that side also. That the person who's the spokesperson is not necessarily the one who's going to build the growth of the company, because that person who's building the tech is also building the natural growth of the company. Like, how will this be API integrated with the world? You don't need to like race to another player to get this
Correct.
thing done. Yeah, so I'm just saying a lot of all that kind of thing. So I'm just saying it's changing. So the rules are definitely changing with these people who are like, for example, in my company, with 60 people, we try to become a unicorn. Let's say, I'm just saying, obviously that's the aspiration. Now, if my CTO comes to me and says that, hey, I'm going to make this happen without you going and doing sales, I'm ready to jack up his equity to a very different level. I'm just saying. So I think it's a very interesting world now compared to any rules of the past. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think the perspective of the CEO traditionally has been somebody who's keeping everything together and largely is outward facing, right? Not necessarily, inward. At some point in time, you may have been the key builder now, and that's why when we look at companies to invest, one of the biggest and positive signals for us is a builder who has what we call a selling bone. In today, yeah, in today's world, if you are a builder who has ability to sell, I think there's nothing that can stop you.
But the chances of success are much higher that way. That's for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
And also, if that's the value you bring, then you need to be rewarded appropriately, which is fair, and I think it's going to be largely accepted, as well. So coming down to the second company, again, that you started you bootstrapped that, and again, hiring in terms of getting people on board, setting up a culture. Did you find anything different from the first time? Because what the talent was different, right? The first one was more of people who are doing sales and BPO and a very different profile versus the second company. So in terms of hiring, in terms of rewarding, what changed at the second time?
First one, it became a lot more easier because there was success behind. Then everything, like, just if I would tell anyone that, hey, you know what, we'll do this, there'll be tough times and we're bootstrapped and we're going to be obviously enjoying the success later, the story became a lot more easier. The story became, like, I think 10x more easier. Though obviously bootstrap is always tough. It
Right,
sounds that, hey,
absolutely.
you know what, while, so we did generate profit in our first year. I think we generated, 32 lakhs of profit, which is not bad. And we used to delay salaries and everything all the time. And the team was very closely held. But yeah, coming back, I think it was a lot more easier for me compared to anybody else who will start a bootstrap and trying to convince a team. But convincing teams to a vision, I'm sure you've heard this, is also an entrepreneur's trait, right? So you should, I always say, if you do not have these 6 or 7 critical traits, you should be very careful of becoming a solo entrepreneur for sure. You should definitely add
Absolutely.
some teams who can be motivating for people to join at, instead of 30 lakhs, to join at literally 4 lakhs. And people who are ready to say that, hey, you know what, I'm going to tell my wife that 6 months or 12 months, I'm going to struggle without anything. So during my interview stage, I used to ask them, are they married? And have they talked to their wife? Have they talked to their parents? So I used to make everything absolutely so clear that the filter would make a person reach who's saying, hey, I am desperate to either learn from you, or I'm desperate to make a brand of myself, or I'm okay to hustle as hard as that because that's what I enjoy. It has to be an answer to all three, or any of these 3 reasons, right? So I used to actually call up their parents and say, uncle, tough life होएगी, आपका बेटा मेरे से सीखना चाहता है, is that okay with you? So I used to do that. I used to write letters to them that, hey, last year we did this, we struggled like this, but this year we're getting a 10% jump on all of us. And look at the media articles we got. Here is where your son or daughter has been on that. So we used to do that continuously, so that they used to also say, hey, you know what, my parents know. My wife knows that I'm doing that, because it used to become difficult otherwise if you do not go that deep rooted with the family ethos in a bootstrap for sure. So yes, it became easier, but it was tough financially. And we had our own things. We got a new office. As soon as we generated some money, there was a full theft of everything. Then one day, Economic Times was in our office to cover us full page, and one of my partner's house came on a fire. I'm just like, you always, I think in Bootstrap, anything that pinches you pinches you 10 times more. It's like a whip effect. I call it a bootstrap effect. You get hurt somewhere, you get the hurt maximum with that. Even if whatever, it's like it's the same thing in a funded company. You're not sleeping because of financials at least. At least till you're funded well, right? So I think getting the team was easier. We got the most interesting board on that company. So getting board is also part of the team. We had the who's who of the country at that stage, 2008 or 9. People never came on boards. We got the who's who on the board, as like I literally sat out of people's offices to convince them to come on a board, and we got them. And that getting a good board, getting yourself who used to get themselves audited by KPMG. I used to get myself audited by KPMG from day one. So I convinced KPMG. I still remember for 1.6 lakh as annual audit budget. Today they don't talk to you below.
I know.
So when you say all this, you tell the team sees that hey, the fundamentals are right with this guy. So but you have to hustle to get all these right to ensure all that is there. Yeah. So yeah.
No, I haven't heard of too many people who speak to employees' parents to kind of convince them and so on. You are one of the unique guys from that perspective. So I can see why the people worked for you and stayed with you. But do you see any example or any? I mean, again, we can avoid names, but anyone you badly wanted and who got away? You couldn't hire them.
I got him or I didn't get him.
No, somebody whom you didn't get, because you couldn't meet
Oh,
their
yeah. I have a
financial.
perfect example for you, and I can name the person also. Okay. So I don't know if you know Umang Bedi. He is the
Yeah.
co-founder of, okay. So Umang Bedi and I, for my third startup, Goals 101, because he was Adobe head, then he was Facebook head. I met him, I don't know, through some network. And we finalized that he's going to join as a co-founder with me at Goals 101. I already had one or two co-founders with me, but he was a great seller. And we finalized all the terms, and let's say, I don't remember the exact date, but let's say 29th May 2016 or 17. Sequoia and I think what was the other investor? Matrix. And they had invested in this Daily Hunt. They gave him a crazy offer. So I still remember, I think I gave him an offer which was sub 1 crore, and though we were funded, and they made an 8 times offer on everything, and the stock was like 30 times offer. And we had great bonding, family level, everything, and we were just about to join because Facebook required him to resign and take some time. And then he joined, but obviously he was a very nice guy. He came on our statutory board. He told Matrix and Sequoia that, hey, I'll come on Visham's statutory board. He stayed with me through the statutory board. And one of the letters that I wrote after he came was to his parents also, that, hey, thanks. You brought up a great kid in Umang, and he's doing extremely well and everything and whatever. So extremely well and everything and everything. So Umang called me with literally like wet eyes and say, Visham, I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs. I miss joining you, but you wrote this grand letter that shows your character. I'm like, this is something that I'm going to follow in life. So Umang Bedi was one of the person who was about to join us, but he joined Daily Hunt, and look, we took Daily Hunt too.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a fantastic story. I mean, obviously younger employees, the concerns would be different, and I can still kind of relate to you having a chat with their parents, but somebody like Umang's caliber, stuff, just telling them, wow, I mean, that's awesome, Visham. I had never heard this stuff before. Kudos to you and what you've done there. So this was the third company, is it? Or this was the second company?
This was the third company. After Plat 5, it was Indian Health Organization. This one was called Goals 101. As I always tell you, I put a number to the thing. And Goals 101 was the Route 101 in US, where all the big companies in the world are. So the goal was to reach there.
And that got acquired by
M2P about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that also has got a number. So it's like...
yeah, actually, right.
And I know, so how many people were there when the acquisition took place? And like, since these guys had joined you earlier, and like you rightly said, there's probably, on a compressed salary compared to the market and so on. What was the economics for them when the exit happened? Did a lot of these people make some wealth for themselves? Were there ESOPs? What were your thoughts around that?
When we had the exit, and I'll tell you the business model so that you get some context. Okay. So I'll tell you some interesting people who are with me in the company, like the Oracle MD of India joined us, Sandeep Mathur. The Amex CEO for Asia and Australia, Sanjay Rishi, was on the advisory board. Then we had the Google MD, previous Google MD of India, the head, Prasad Ram, on the advisory board. So we had very interesting people as always. And it was a business where a bank's transaction is read by our company. So we used to go to the banks and say, I want to understand all your credit card, debit card transaction of every customer. We'll predict the next transaction with AI, and then we'll make a brand, send a communication to this customer saying that without telling Satish that you want to do a coffee transaction at 4 p.m. today, at 3 p.m. you'll get a Starbucks communication. And if you do a transaction to that brand, because we are predicting that you're doing coffee, take an X percentage from the brand. So that was the business side. 2016 it started. We got 5 banks in 12 months, giving us the entire database. Okay, it's not easy to get the bank's entire database to you, right? And we got the entire database with obviously hashed IDs and of the customers and all that. 2018, Visa said we want to take this product global. We first white label product that Visa would have done probably across the world or India, called VMAP. 2000, one of the senior advisory board member meets the chairman of Visa, and they call us, hey, either for investment or acquisition, and we say no at that stage because we said, hey, we are rising up like crazy. 2019-20, 3 months down the line, COVID happens, where the bank's transactions go from millions a day to 3 a day. Stop, zero. Our business model is about reading bank's transaction and suggesting a next transaction. I was the first entrepreneur in the country to make a LinkedIn post saying no one in the company will have a salary cut. I did not know how long COVID is going to be. We did not, except the seniors, like 8 or 9 of us. We did, even the Oracle MD of India, who was at an 18 crore salary in his previous company, came back to nothing at all. So from all that hustle from required, then MasterCard partnered with us exclusively for India. A lot of good things happened, but the transactions went to zero till 2022. At this period in between, because I had committed to the team, I went to different investment bankers, including PwC, and then we got 3 offers. And during this period, we were able to sell it for a decent quantum.
But you still had not raised any capital, right?
In this company, we had raised capital. Hence, we could afford a little bit of those salaries because these people were expensive to pay to. These 50 odd, 70 odd people were as expensive as probably 100, 150 for any other company, because they were AI first PhD leaders and people who could convince a bank to partner, or a Visa or MasterCard to partner with you. So we were one of the 2 acquisitions probably in the country in that year. And we got 3 offers. And so what I try to say is that if you have all your fundamentals right, if you have kept a compliant company, if you kept a good team, if you got a good board, even if in times of challenge, and we got a good deal, by the way, we got a very good deal in which some of the investors, what I said that, hey, probably you're not getting the returns that you wanted, but I'm doing a stock swap with you, which allows you to probably grow with the next company. And hence, all of them have a full potential to earn a lot more than what they would have probably earned on a all cash exit. Obviously, there was cash also, but yeah.
So the company that acquired was also a private company, right? They had not listed.
Yeah. M2P is a private company.
So when that acquisition happened, was there some sort of a liquidity for employees?
Yeah. Obviously, the employees have to get liquidity. Yeah.
Correct. So so in terms of private market liquidity, and that's an interesting concept for us, because whenever you see a private market company getting acquired by a public market company, then people know that suddenly overnight your stocks are liquid and you can do whatever, right? But if it continues to be a private market liquidity, then the acquiring company has to make sure that there is some liquidity available for the companies, and maybe fresh ownership in the newer company going forward, and so on. So any learnings from there? What would you tell somebody who's getting these offers, like a founder getting offers by another private company? What should they be looking forward to? What should they watch out when they make these deals with a larger acquirer, but still maybe still private company?
So I think there are a couple of, this is something that I can probably consult on, because sometimes I think, what can I do if I ever do not be an entrepreneur? In an M&A, what are the critical 8 or 10 parameters that are critical in the contract for both sides is extremely essential, because the success of your company after the acquisition is more important than what you were doing prior, right? Because that's your brand.
Correct.
So the parameters have to be fair to both sides, but those 8 or 10 things, sometimes even the acquiring companies are new in acquisitions, right?
Correct.
So
correct. Absolutely.
9 months, because just imagine COVID times in which fund and is getting depleted and revenues are almost not coming because banks are saying, hey, you generate only revenue with this. I took 9 full months to do the deal because I kept guiding the team, myself, the investment banker and the acquirer, that all this is essential for ensuring a good relationship between us and the success of the company. So I think this is something that I can kind of guide people, or a very different interesting thing, that what are the most essential aspects of an acquisition, including full disclosures. So in full disclosure, I have an interesting point to share.
Okay,
So
cool.
so just to tell everyone, so second company was acquired by Aetna, Bootstrap. We had options from two other leading giant insurance companies. So and we got the term sheet, we signed it up, and a week before the president had to come down to India, Aetna president had to come down to India. IRDA sent us a notice that, hey, I think you're doing insurance business, and hence talk to us. And I wrote back to, we are doing insurance, I need to talk to you. So I told the investment banker that we should inform it. And I was always, and the guy said, look, we've disclosed everything. There's no clause to say that you need to disclose anything any further. I wrote that letter. I still remember I scanned the letter, sent it to the president and obviously his legal teams and all. And I said, look, I want to tell you that this is a thing that has come to us. We know we're not doing this. I want to tell you that. He wrote back to say, now we'll 100% do the deal, because there are times when you hear of emerging country entrepreneurs who do not share things with you. This is exactly what we wanted. Your compliances are right. You're a full disclosure guy. This part we'll handle also, and we know you're not insurance. So there are instances in life where we think that the deal will stop because of that. If you hide, it may not stop, but tomorrow down the line, you'll get a repercussion. That is guaranteed, because the company is not a child's play, right? So I'm saying one of the important aspects is full disclosure. Second is you have to have full respect for the acquirer, that they should benefit out of it. If you have these two, if you're in their shoes also, I think the deal will ensure that you're doing all this right. There are structures to ensure how an investor can earn more versus an entrepreneur can earn more. They're very interesting structure, which I will do it offline with someone, but there are structures to do that. But yeah, ensure that your team also benefits. Your money back home, how much money will you earn as an entrepreneur, and ensure that 40 people are unhappy, right? So you should be benevolent. You should be allowing everybody to earn. So there are a couple of ingredients if you keep them right, because the deal takes time, and if your core staff leaves or they're not happy or they write something, those are essential aspects to it. But structuring, so when you're on the side of the acquirer, let's say the acquirer is still not very cash rich, would you ask for a pound of flesh of cash? They will not do it, right? You know their boards have approved it. They will do a deal, but you have to be ensuring that the deal is a win-win. And if your maths and your teams are smart, the deal is a way that you'll finally make money out of it. And that's the end goal for sure.
Yeah, again, my question is more coming from a perspective of there are not a lot of acquisitions that happen in India, right? Like somebody like you has gone through it, and someone who has got access to you will probably understand, can maybe learn, talk to you and so on. But generally, what we've seen is people get loosely defined term sheet, and term sheets are generally going to be 2 pages without any details and so on, right? And what you did over the next the 9 months that you talked about is essentially a process where you try to figure out, who are the stakeholders here and how is everybody taken care of and so on and so forth. But when it comes specifically to employees, is there anything that you would advise a founder who has got this offer to be bought out, saying, hey, here are the red flags, from your team perspective, so make sure that these things are addressed? Would there be like, if you were to
lots. There are lots, but I'll say a couple of them. For example, I've seen there's a new thing in the entrepreneurial world in India, for example, exercising of the shares, for example. It's a that an employee doesn't understand. Like vesting is something that they understand. Let's say it could be 25% each or 33% each or 10, 20, 30, 40. As soon as the employee leaves, there is obviously a compliance clause that, hey, you should be exercising it. For a long illiquidity event, far liquid event, who will exercise? So a good company should have a long exercise period given to employees. If the acquirer is not having that kind of policy or that kind of aspect for you, because if let's say it's a stock swap and employees leaving after a year, because they already spent 5-6 years with this company and they should be entitled to leave. So if me as a founder is not signing a contract which allows them to have a right exercise period, I'm just giving an example of one of the clauses. This completely gets hidden because nobody understands this as one of the things. Employment contracts, how can I, for cause, not for cause, how am I allowed to remove a person, right? It's very easy. Founder gets the money. If like, let's say you're my employee and you leave, the equity can come to me, the ownership, the earning can come to me, but you're not here to do all that. I'm just saying, so how do you put across those clauses is extremely essential. How much you fight for that, for your team. Actually, for a good acquirer, they see it as a good trade that, hey, look, this founder is keeping it right for his team, so he'll be good for us too. So, and in my company, I will be very proud to say after the acquisition, I think 95% of the team have stayed for the entire 2 years after that. They've got their jumps. They are not only doing that project, they're doing multiple other projects. So that allowed acquirer as well as the team to be happy. So ensuring for your teams is ensuring your foundations of your house in the future also stay strong, right? So if you keep with that thought process, which is sometimes missed, for sure, I've seen it, because some of the where I've invested, I could see that, hey, you know what, they're trying to hoodwink the employee in some form. That won't take you long. That won't take you too far away. At least they will take you for financially, but not morally over the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, see, first half of my life was largely dealing with Silicon Valley companies, and Silicon Valley, and in the US in general, there are a lot of acquisition examples, right? Companies routinely acquire each other, and there's a lot of playbooks and the goods and bads and so on. So one of the things that's very common there is this acceleration, and they call it single trigger versus double trigger, because you may get the company gets acquired, but some people may lose their job in 6 months. In those cases, what do you do? And so on and so forth. Do you see, in your experience of investing and your own experience in getting these companies sold, are these up for discussion when you are talking to potential buyers or law firms and so on? Do these things come up? Say, hey, do you want to do this, or this is potential problem, or you still think the ecosystem is not very knowledgeable? Employees is one part. Employees is probably are at the bottom end of the knowledge in terms of all of the nuances, right? But there are law firms, and especially when a large company is buying a small company, large company would also have your KPMG and a bunch of other people like that. So what kind of discussions happen when it comes to some of these? Is the ecosystem in India so far healthy?
Again, it depends on the founder entrepreneur this side, and I also on that side also. Look, I always mandate that, hey, here's a business plan which is conservative, and if I am XYZ here and there'll be no interference. I will decide who to stay. For example, tomorrow your company can decide, hey, we want to retrench X percentage. It should not be affecting me, because one of the reasons is earnouts of mine and my team linked to it. So how much are you able to push back the fact that I'll be given that independence for the success of yours and mine is a very basic fundamental, and you should do it. So if you do not do that, so that's what I'm saying. It's a little bit of all these ingredients in the contracts that you have to ensure that you push back. As I said, if I am acquiring company and a founder tells me that, I will double respect the founder that, hey, you know what, he's got every ingredient required to ensure that the success of the company. So yes, in all my clauses, I kept that fact that on all my contracts, these acquisitions, I kept the contract to be saying that, hey, I will be the one who will take the call on removing of a person, not a central decision of yours.
So coming to your latest company, I mean, unlike the rest of the companies where you bootstrapped and got to some point, here you raised money fairly quickly in the journey of the company, right? So what was behind it? You didn't think of bootstrapping again?
Okay, this is a good one. I'm interested. I'm smiling more because this is my current baby, and I obviously I'm very excited about it. So just to tell you a story of this, about 2 years ago, these two young entrepreneurs came to my office, and I like people who are sitting on the edge of the chairs, who are like desperate to reach to a certain reason why they're becoming entrepreneurs, and they were doing something in certain other industry. I told them, hey, can you pivot this a little to this industry? I'll fund it. So me and my friends put about $700,000 in this company. Then about 9 months ago, I was thinking that, hey, after this acquisition, what should I do next? Which one is going? So I did my macro studies. Electronic manufacturing is the fastest growing, and this is growing at 35%. And I kind of understand the challenges. And that's why I said that, hey, guys, I'm going to acquire your equity and I'm going to run it. And obviously for them, that little acquisition was also good enough because they were kids, and took it over. And then I got two founders. Both have done multiple unicorn exits. And then one of them had raised about $700 million in last investment. So he's more of the introducer to the investor, and I'm more of the closer. So yes, and then these things moved so fast. Like I was doing banking business where there are only 10, 15 big banks in a country. They're manufacturing, there are hundreds of companies. Suddenly the canvas was bigger. The scope of doing more was bigger, and AI over here is not come in manufacturing at all. Let me put it that way. We started adding clients like anything. And that's where two of our existing clients came back to us, can we invest in your company? And then that's when I went to my other founder and said, hey, you know what, existing clients saying is a big tick mark for an investor also. Let's go and raise. So we were 4 to 5 times oversubscribed.
Wow. Wow.
And we were 4 to 5 times investment by the nicest of entrepreneurs in the country, and some of them who are your investors also. And they all asked us to invest more. We politely asked them that can you do a little lesser this time, and probably in the next round we'll help you add more. So yes, so that's where we raise money, because the growth and the canvas is much bigger. All of us, at least one of the co-founders, built a $4 to $5 billion company. So, and one of them has had 2 exits of $1 billion plus. So we said that let's try and build a decacorn, and in which a decacorn faster approach would be to raise some funding.
So walk me through this thing of getting these two, these new founders on board. So typically, like you said, what you've done in the past is the kernel of the idea has been yours, and then slowly you've added people, right? So some similar sense that I see, but is in a slightly different thing, that somebody else had a little bit of an idea, but you thought you could make it bigger, then acquired them, and then started to, grow the canvas, much bigger.
They were doing a technology where I said, okay, let's do this industry, this product, this idea. So it was incubated. A majority of the share at that time also was with me, as me and my family, and more than 80% was with me and my family. And then we just bought out the rest of the shares. So that was one. The reason why I added 2 founders was because if I really had to build a decacorn, I needed somebody who understands supply chain very well. Just imagine the biggest supply chain company's co-founder, someone I co-convinced to join me. He was live in a $4 billion plus company, and I kind of requested that, hey, come here and let's do this together. And why did you ask your previous founders to continue and help list that company? And he joined here with absolutely perfect entry.
You make it sound so simple, but I'm sure there is a lot of science and a lot of effort and a lot of thought process that goes into this, because these are not in all my years of working, I still find hiring the hardest job, because it takes a while to understand people's aspirations. You don't know what their issues are. And whether you get them on board as a partner, as a co-founder, or an employee, I think the building blocks of these relationships are largely the same. You're just trying to figure out if there is a match in terms of values, match in terms of what you can offer, what they can offer you at this point in time. But, and the reason I'm a little pressing on that is you seem to talk from a perspective of, hey, I did this and I convinced this, but there must be some method in your mind, right? What do you think fundamentally appealed to this person? Where you can say, okay, I can work with Visham and then we can go build a decacorn. Is it the ambition that you are trying to put forward? Is there something else that you fundamentally appealed, through what you're trying to build?
So obviously, I will not deny the fact that sometimes you have to be lucky to have the right partners. And one day, whenever I have time, I'll tell you how I stay in their house. How do we still, all of us still holiday? Like 2 months ago, all partners of mine naturally went for a holiday together. It's not that I was saying, hey, Milan, you want to come for this holiday? Hey, so now we coming to your place. So all that happened. I think like a cook, sometimes you know that you can cook well. Okay, so I don't want to come and say, hey, these are the ways to do it. Sometimes you know that, hey, you can add a good team, you can add a good co-founder, you have the convincing skills. So one of the aspects is to able to understand body language. So when I meet people, I'm able to read a person quite well, decently well, to say that this person will require this kind of inspiration or talk to try and tell them the good parts. Obviously, you don't want to put someone in a wrong place, whatever. So one of the aspects that which was the reason for this background, Dad was in the government, got posted in different places, allowed me to understand multiple cultures, multiple cities, multiple type of people. I always encourage people to have multi-city exposure. Even if you have kids, try and make them go to different cities, because that's how they will learn what's happening. So I'm decently good at reading a person, a personality, then allow, and over years, if let's say Satish calls up and someone say, hey, 9 out of 10 people will say Visham can do well. Obviously, there will be always an employee, always some investor will say, hey, you know what, I missed that on that person. So you have to have the right blocks that anybody wants to finally check about you, right? So that's second. So you should be able to read. Third is the network, that out of, let's say, 50 people who are eligible for the co-founder thing, I knew which are the 6 companies, which are the players and there that I should be able to talk to. You can't just go and, I didn't go to a job finder or whatever that, hey, find me this person. So able to yourself have a sense of a person's requirements and whatever should be a natural trait, I think. then obviously able to get that network right. And then finally, the convincing skill has to be right to able to convince that person. So yes, it is something that I can probably say it is a multiplication of luck and some gifted aspects. And that is why I really enjoy my journey, because once I get the right partners, I'm good at managing them also. There are times when some partners has a different requirement. One of the current founder is extremely aggressive, and the other founder is not aggressive. Like he likes to go deep, one likes to go, hey, tomorrow morning let's generate $10 million of revenue. So managing things is a very easy thing for me now. So yeah, I think some of it comes out naturally. And I would just say, but yeah, obviously there's not, I would say there's no madness in this. So I'm just saying there's this natural instinct to be able to reach to a good co-founder.
So, so again, one of the harder problems is there are a lot of talented people, and especially coming from a tech background, and some of these people would really they could be introverts. They would probably not know how to position, how to market, how to price, the economics. There's so many parts of the business, right? So you see a lot of incubators today in the country and all over the world try to help you find a co-founder, right? So now from what you have learned, obviously you are a individual of some extreme skills, what I can figure out in this conversation.
Some of them, not all of them. Yeah.
Having trying to understand, pick people and convincing them to be with you, right? But let's leave all the business needs. But if I'm looking for a co-founder, if a young founder is today going and looking for a co-founder, what are some of the red flags? Let's assume that I meet three people, all three of them fit the bill of the business, saying, okay, these guys could probably do what I don't do. They bring some complementary skills and so on. But in terms of all of the non-technical aspect of it, what would you advise them to look for? What would you ask them to spend more time on trying to figure out whether you would work well with this person and so on? So are there any set of guidelines that you would give a budding entrepreneur on how to find a co-founder?
Broadly, I can give some inputs because I always get very intelligent technical people and they are saying, hey, I can do this very well. Do you have one founder? So that itself was a start to saying, hey, Visham, can you help me find one? So reaching out / telling the world what you're doing is one aspect. Obviously, you should do that and whatever. One of the things that is easier, a little more practical is what I've seen is that I've told them to go back in their years of college or in their years of a little bit of work that they have done. Whoever they thought that they resonated with, or somebody who understood them well. Okay, for example, in engineering college, somebody would say, hey, you know what? I have these 5 great friends, best friends, but for business, I think I need to convince this Amit guy in my batch, right? So a lot of that is something that I would tell them to go back, identify those couple of people, and maybe come jointly with me. For example, that was one way. I'm just giving that's a solution that I can help you talk to each other properly and say that, guys, you can do this together. Because once they get into it, they start resonating. But going back to your ecosystem is a much better way than absolutely somebody fresh coming to, especially person who's introvert. Because he's intelligent, he's introvert, he will not be able to express himself and may feel frustrated down the line. So you may get him a good partner. So going back to your network is something that I would encourage everyone to go back, try and think of everything that you have gone through or done in life and try and get someone out of that. Not necessarily your best friend, your closest friend, a friend that you thought has the complementary skills. Otherwise, it's not that easy to get from, like, say, obviously you can ask someone else to do that. But in that scenario, for an introvert, I'll always encourage them to have a 3-person partner, because then conflict is there. And I've seen a lot of the companies fall because of the conflict itself. So at least I get a 3rd person who's a partner or arbitrator as like an advisor who's taking the calls in case of any whatever, thinking difference, whatever.
Yeah, but a lot of times you've seen serendipity working, right? Like I've never worked with this person before, but somehow you will hit off in the 2 days, 3 days you meet, and then you decide to start. And there the data is it's worked many times, but it has also not worked many of the times. And whenever it has not worked, you go back and see there will be a value system disconnect. There will be certain fundamental disconnects between the two individuals, where if you had spent enough time trying to understand and know this, you probably wouldn't have come together at all. So I'm like more of trying to look at all of these places where you somehow happen to meet somebody who has some little understanding of the same problem. He's probably also trying to solve this problem in the same industry, and then you figure out that you are complementary and you come together. But things may not kind of work well because there's a value system mismatch. So how does somebody evaluate this? Is there and it gets complicated if one of the persons is an introvert, right? You don't even know what questions to ask, and so on. So do you always recommend taking the help of somebody like you or somebody who can, make this evaluation?
I would not want that as in like for them. I wish they learned everything themselves. Obviously, the learning is that way, but sometimes that learning is very expensive to the the context that the company may not take it forward. I've had some of the companies which have become a unicorn or whatever, where I've seen founders fight at such initial stages, and then I said, hey, just keep sticking it out. And happened. If they would have not come to a third person, they would have fought and gone back. I'm just saying as in like split also. So I think learning themselves is there, but very expensive. So always, I think there should be forum. While you were saying that, I thought it should be like a matchmaking thing available in the country. I don't know how many VCs or anybody is doing this as an idea that, hey, I'll take 2%, but I'll help you. There's a list of people who want to be an entrepreneur on the business side. Here's a list of people who want to be tech side. This is the idea. You want to do a match or whatever. Yes, the answer to all this is not a straight yes to anything, actually. It's coming to me, coming to anybody who's like a Satish or whatever. Preferred as in like preferred after you know that you cannot do it yourself. I think so that I would not have a straight answer for anyone for this one for sure, saying that, hey, you know what, this is what you should do. But I think a couple of us, at least 50, 100 of us, to the right idea, we should be somebody who catalyzes that, sure, for the right ideas. That, hey, this is the right idea, we are there to, or maybe somebody actually comes up with that business idea saying, hey, you know what, because there are a lot of mentorship kind of ideas that have come up and all that. They have not done too well as such in India, at least. So there should be some forums for the right ideas where they're able to match make that right. But yeah, I've seen it. Actually, frankly, I've seen all of it. People have tried to do it and still not worked. People have not done it. It has worked. So I would always encourage everyone to go back to their network and do it themselves. If I had to put my 4 fingers on one button, that would be that, hey, go back to your network, your school, your college, try and think, because if you're thought so hard for your business, try and go back and think and try and convince that person. If not, then obviously go and take help from someone else.
Yeah, no, that's very good advice. The issue that I see is, and one of the hardest problems to solve here is a lot of people don't know what they don't know, right? So you really need and say, hey, I didn't know that I had to do all of this. Then suddenly I get caught. I mean, there are a lot of organizations, mostly very early stage incubators, who come in where you have a very, very basic idea. You're not even sure whether you want to start a company. Just iterate here, meet a few people, figure out whether you can build a business or not. And through that process, you'll also figure out, whether there would be somebody else who would kind of be good to partner with to go build the business. But like I said, the results are, maybe we are trying to judge it a little too early because some of these initiatives have been new. But I'm seeing more and more of people randomly coming together. And what we have seen is, usually I've not seen as much data as in 2 founders coming together and things not working out. It's almost like 3 or 4 coming together and one of them dropping off. I don't know what you've seen in your angel investing journey. Do you see people, like when there is a multi-founder setup coming in, do you see more people, more companies where one of the founders drops off?
The reason I'm saying why 2 is a challenge is, I continuously say that it's a binary outcome which is shut. Like, let's say it's at least with 3 or 4, even if one is leaving, the outcome is not shut. The risk is too high for an investor or a company or a co-founder to let it shut. So I always encourage anything that leads to a binary outcome in life also should not be very encouraged, except a marriage, obviously. I'm just saying. So yeah, so I'm just saying, when you have 2 players, they will be, at least if one of them is not mature, even one, both not mature, obviously, one of them not mature itself leads to a binary outcome. And that becomes very difficult if you don't have the right contracts. Again, they can do a good partnership. They have the right contract, at least one continues. Yeah, so I would not bring a company to 0-1. That is the reason I insist that it should be a 3 or a 5 or whatever, or a 4 also, whatever. But at least not 2 is what my definite input is.
No, that's great advice. Now, just ending on that note, in terms of founders leaving and so on, how do you structure ownership? I know a lot of people want to do reverse vesting. A founder leaves, you try to claw back, the ownership so that it can be given to a new person and so on. Any advice to people on what can be done there?
Oh, these are very simple contracts. I think in today's world, the contract should be signed in day one. It's like a prenup in you because the chances of someone leaving is quite decently high. So I think it's a prenup with which all these contracts. Well, a good legal firm can very easily put this across, saying at what stage are you leaving, what's your contribution, what's the reason you're leaving. Is it a reason that you've done anything wrong? All this can be put very easily. They should be put. Do not underassume the fact that there can be a problem down the line, and it's best to do it when the times are best rather than when the times are tough, right? Times are tough, you will start pulling each other's hair rather than anything else and say negative, including the fact that nobody will say negative for each other, if they leave or whatever. Stay respectful. So putting contracts right is very easy these days, and I think everybody should do it at day one. I told insist that you have a founder contract or not. A founder contract is a must to invest.
Cool. This is so helpful, Visham. I think I'm pretty much done. The idea was trying to understand your journey, especially with people, and some of the stories that you shared. Again, I will say this thing again, that you made it sound so simple, but I'm sure there's some special skills behind you, which is enabling you to get more people on board to work with you and continue to work with you. So for the new one that you're doing, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Visham. I think our audience will learn a lot of stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much.